Thanks for joining us for another episode of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here at the News Forum where all voices matter. Is the widely popular app TikTok, originating from a Chinese company, a national security threat? Is TikTok a data gathering Trojan horse? Our guest has raised several warning signals, and I want to welcome to our program Stephen Marr. He is a Harvard Nieman Fellow and a Maclean's Magazine contributing editor. Great to have you on Boom and Bust today.
My pleasure.
So I guess the first question, just in order to educate our viewers, can you describe what TikTok is and its popularity?
TikTok is an extremely popular app that if your viewers don't know about it, they should ask their younger relatives because they likely do. It has, I think, about 1 billion users around the world, including about 100 million in the United States. It's a phenomenon. The guys who created it understood something very sharp about the way people use their phones, and they sort of bundled together elements of a music sharing app and a video sharing app. And the secret sauce is the algorithm. Because of security concerns, I've never installed it, so I don't actually know how the algorithm would reflect my views. But what users say is it finds it has an uncanny ability to serve you content that you find interesting.
Hmm.
So if you sometimes people are really freaked out by how accurate it is, and they'll think, how does TikTok know that?
Right.
And it's so successful with young people, which advertisers and social media companies are desperate to get them to come on board, that Facebook and Facebook's, or Meta, I guess we could say, Mark Zuckerberg's company, which runs Facebook and Instagram, is really on its back foot and trying to figure out how to keep the young people from going to TikTok and abandoning Insta and Facebook.
Right. And so let's just unpack a little bit their data gathering capability. So just unpack that. Are they gathering data while you're on the app or from other apps that you have? How does this work exactly?
So this is all kind of mysterious, but their permissions allow them to gather all kinds of data, including your contacts, your keyboard strokes, and your location data. When you when you think about all of the stuff that the app is able, that users are consenting to share this information, it would allow them to learn a great deal about you as an individual, and troublingly for national security reasons, in aggregate. If you have even a small amount of data about a large number of people that includes where they are, their age, their those kinds of things, you should be able to learn really an awful lot about that society. And the troubling thing is the company has been shown to have misrepresented the protections that
Right.
it has in.
We've got about a minute before the break, but talk a little bit more about that.
So, in testimony in front of the Senate, I don't have to tell you, Mr. Clement, that people are supposed to tell the truth when they testify. You've been part of hearings and you've testified and you've asked people questions. In A senior TikTok executive said in the U.S. Senate, we do not allow any of the data to go to China. Subsequently, journalists got taped meetings of senior executives acknowledging that everything goes to China, and in fact, the American staff are not able to access the data without assistance from Beijing. So what this means is that the assurances that they have offered are not very meaningful.
We're going to take a brief break from our guest. We're going to have a bit of a commercial break. We'll be back after these messages. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here at the News Forum, here with Stephen Marr. He is a Harvard Neiman Fellow and a Maclean's Magazine contributing editor. We're talking about TikTok. Stephen, I guess you mentioned the U.S. Senate hearing on TikTok. So is this data gathering ability that it has, is this a new concern? Have there been warnings in the past? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, there have been repeated warnings. The China hawks or China critics, who are often associated with the Republican Party in the United States, have often said, well, this is terrible. And, they associate it with other matters that they're apprehensive about Chinese influence over American society. And the intelligence community has often issued similar sort of warnings. The context of this is, if we look at other companies like WeWa, forgive me if I'm saying that wrong, I often do, we see, the American intelligence experts have raised concerns about a pattern of Chinese telecoms equipment being located near military bases, of both industrial and state espionage at a breathtaking scope in the United States. And what's, I think, somewhat unfortunate is, like everything in Washington these days, it kind of gets tangled up in the main partisan struggle between the two parties.
Right. Right. So, in a sense, this has become a partisan issue there. But I guess the issue, one of the things that is bipartisan about U.S. politics is the threat of China these days, actually, surprisingly. So how can the Chinese government, if they had access to this data, how could they use it to their advantage?
Well, the one thing is that the most powerful people in the country, all kinds of members of the military has banned, for serving U.S. Military members may not have TikTok on their phones, but their children can, their family members can, and the same thing goes for cabinet ministers and so on. The Chinese can likely tell if they're using this data where close family members of senior politicians are at all times. It includes recently the application's permissions allow for biometric data. I am not an intelligence analyst or intelligence expert, but it seems to me that this is a massive vulnerability for American society, that the Chinese may understand things about the United States because of the power of the aggregated data that they've got in this app, that even the Americans don't know about themselves.
Mm-hmm. No, that obviously has got to be front and center in the concerns. And of course, China has a history, the government of China has a history of mass monitoring. So that must be part of the concern as well.
Yeah, I mean, we see what they're doing with most horribly with the Uyghur minority, the Muslim minority, where they are. It's really not very different from the kind of nightmare scenario that George Orwell's 1984 contained. The people they cannot use their phones without being spied on by the government and that's throughout China. The government is able to look at everyone's apps. There's an extremely creepy sort of social credit score that's associated with every citizen. And in the case of the Uyghur minority, they use data that they gather from people's phones to detain and abuse minority citizens in a way that's horrifying, right?
Right.
That has not happened in Western countries in a long time.
And so, we've got about 30 seconds before the break, but is that the concern that this kind of builds the Chinese ability to do this kind of monitoring and oppression, really?
Yeah, I mean, they're not. Nobody thinks that the Chinese are about to be running the United States anytime soon, but they are not. I think what this shows is that they are not held in check by any kind of ethical or human rights concerns.
And we're back here at Boom and Bust. I'm Tony Clement, the host, here with Stephen Marr. He is a Harvard Nieman Fellow, as well as a Maclean's Magazine contributing editor, talking all things TikTok. Please continue your thought there, Stephen. The implications of some of the Chinese monitoring.
Well, I mean, we know from the way that they monitor their own citizens that they would not have any moral, ethical, or legal qualms in doing the same to citizens in another country. We know that they are attempting to download all kinds of information from Western countries, both state to state level espionage and state to industry espionage. So it appears to me that it is a massive vulnerability that the United States is allowing the agents of a potentially hostile foreign government to just know huge, enormous amounts of information, the scale of which kind of boggles the mind. And something to think about here is that in decades past, in the centuries past, governments had the most important stores of data that often social scientists, professors, statisticians with government were able to amass, large amounts of information that governments could use for planning and understanding their own society. Since the rise of social media titans, we now have in a way, the most important data sets in the world are in the control of private companies, both Meta, Google, and now TikTok. This raises important policy questions, I think. What does it mean if private companies who are not beholden to the public interest have a better understanding of our society than the government does? And we're not talking about fierce competition among many similar small companies. We're talking about monoliths, right?
Right.
Meta, Google, and now they're being joined by a foreign company that is likely or maybe answering to the Chinese state.
So let's just talk. I do want to get back to Canada for a second, but before that, just finish off on the United States, because you do mention in your article how President Trump, like a stopwatch, I think it was the analogy you used, was right for a millisecond and then went on to something else. But at a time, I think before 2020, he was talking about TikTok and how this was a security threat and how TikTok would be kicked out of the United States unless they were bought out. And then that just kind of disappeared. So what is the state of the debate in the United States on this?
Well, there are things, there are regulators, the FCC, there's a Republicans associated with the FCC will say, we don't have jurisdiction over this, but we ought to do something about this. It kind of, and then there's a sort of, the deep state, if you will, raises concerns about it from time to time. Trump had an opportunity to do something about it, but he appears to have not been. He spoke about the security concerns, but it was a time of where he was trying to make moves in a trade war with China, and they were able to kind of rag the puck. The TikTok guys, Trump was trying to basically force them to do some kind of deal with Oracle. He was close to the
Right.
people at Oracle. and nothing ever came of it. India banned TikTok. You could make a pretty good argument, I think, that this is an unacceptable security risk, unless there are things that you and I are not able to know. Uh, this is it seems quite extraordinary, but I don't think that the Democrats who are running Washington at the moment are likely to do anything about this because it's important to them in the crucial midterms ahead.
In the sense that this is how they reach a younger audience?
Yeah, if you look at these midterms that are coming up, you have, the Roe versus Wade issue is very important. There are signs that that's an enormous vulnerability for Republicans, even among Trump supporting women. Uh, I think that the Democrats need, if they're to stop from losing control of the House and the Senate, and they are very focused on that. The Republicans have said they might impeach Biden if they get control of the House. So, this is an existential question for the Biden presidency.
Welcome back to Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here with Stephen Marr. He is a Harvard Nieman Fellow, but as importantly, the Maclean's Magazine contributing editor, talking all things TikTok. We were just diving into the midterms, your point being that the Democrats really don't have an incentive to regulate TikTok or to raise the alarm about it. That's your assessment of things, right?
No, it's an absolutely crucial way for them to reach young voters. And they need young voters if they're going to stop the Republicans from taking control of the House. It's an existential question for them. When you start looking at this, you say, well, this is a very serious security issue. And also, if I was in the Democrats' shoes, I might not do anything about it because, or at least not until after the midterms. And it kind of strikes me that it's like a number of issues in the United States because they are so divided on partisan lines that the question of trying to properly regulate this massive new media ecosystem, whether it's TikTok or Meta or Google and YouTube, it's pretty hard for them to do anything because everything immediately takes on a sort of partisan angle.
Right, right. Got it. But that begs the question. You mentioned Huawei earlier. In Canada, of course, there was a multi-year debate on Huawei, now effectively concluded. But is there any discussion or debate on Parliament Hill about TikTok at this point?
I haven't heard that. When I started researching it, I sort of became alarmed at the thought that Canadian politicians are using this as they are, most effectively, likely Jagmeet Singh. The youth vote, as you know, is very important to New Democrats. And he's often been praised for his adeptness with TikTok. And it strikes me that it's kind of curious that in Canada, no one has said, well, hang on here. You shouldn't have that on your phone, right? You're an important Canadian public figure. We don't want the Chinese government to know where you are at all times and have your biometric data. And, you get, at some point, I guess it gets it down to a fundamental kind of question, which is how do we think of the Chinese? The Chinese government, and we're talking about a communist dictatorship,
right?
Are we afraid of them? Or do we think of them as partners? We have a hugely important trade issue with them, but do we trust them with this kind of data that I like? Jagmeet Singh probably wouldn't want the liberals to know where he is all the time. Is it okay that the Chinese know?
And it does raise the question because, as you said, it is something that is around everywhere now. And at the same time, surely we've had enough dealings with the government of the People's Republic of China to know that they don't have our best interests at heart. So is the regulation horse kind of out of the barn at this point, or is there something that can be done to regulate this better?
Oh, I think it could be. But, well, what Donald Trump wanted to do, and I hate to point to Donald Trump as an example of anything good, but he wanted to ban it. India banned it.
Right.
Trump was trying to basically forced TikTok to be taken over by an American company. Um, I don't see the impetus for that now in Washington. Um, and it seems unlikely that in Canada we're, we don't have the market power.
Right.
And we don't think about ourselves as having the market power. Um, Personally, when it comes to social media regulation, I often think that the Europeans set a better example than the Americans. They have a somewhat more assertive regulatory state, um, which, in my view, with this dangerous new technology that's causing uh, harms in many ways, that it's sort of incumbent on regulators to go out into the Wild West and establish some rules and norms. There is a libertarian argument against it, and that libertarian argument, ironically, ends up in this case uh, being used to defend communists.
It's a very interesting kettle of fish you've got there. Stephen Maher, thank you for your presentation of this issue, and certainly will be following this one very closely. Thanks again.
Nice to talk to you, Tony. Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting discussion there with Stephen Maher talking about TikTok and some of the consequences and concerns of data gathering and manipulation by the Chinese government. Hope you found that interesting, and thank you for watching once again.